Welcome to Nicholas Hood III Ministries, a ministry of hope, spiritual inspiration, personal power guided by Christian love. May the power of God's Holy Spirit fall upon you as you sit back and enjoy today's program. I introduce you now to Pastor Nicholas Hood III.
I want to talk to you today about one of my favorite verses in the Bible, Romans 8:28. Paul says, all things, not some things, but all things, work together for good for those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. And when we hear that verse, all things, not some things, not a few things, not, a handful of things, but all things work together for good for those who love God. Some people look at me when I, say that I really believe this. They say, Reverend, how can you say that? There's a lot of bad that happens in this life. There are tragedies that happen. Sometimes people are brutally murdered. Some people are born rich. Others are born to parents that are poor, they're impoverished. How can you say that all things work together for good? Some people go to prison. Some people get divorced. Some people come down with cancer. Now the COVID. How can you say all things work together for good? We've just come through this conflict between Israel and Palestine. And some people will say, but Reverend, how can you say all things work together for good when so many people have been killed on both sides of that struggle? We look at Ukraine and Russia. So many people have been killed on both sides. When we look at the history of the African American, the slaves who came here from the west coast of Africa and who've been through so much. I mean, my own family has come through that process. My great-grandfather was a white man, a brother of a General John Bell Hood, a man named William Hood. And he fathered my great-grandfather. I don't know who my great-grandmother was, but on the death certificate, the mother is not mentioned. But I'm only saying this to say that you can look at my story and you can say, how can you say all things work together for good? But I tell you, when I look at my life, when I think about where I've been, what I've done, when I think about the good things that have happened, when I think about the unfortunate things, the bad things, the sad things, I can truly say all things have worked together for good. Let me tell you a little story about me. A few weeks ago, I had a friend of mine on this show, Dwight Andrews, pastor in Atlanta, Georgia. He and I, when we met as children, we played football together in Little League, and then a few years later, about 5 years later, we reconnected in high school. And we were in a very intensive music program. I thought I was going to be a musician. We ended up making $100 a night per musician in our band. And we made so much money playing music that actually we made more money than the bar musicians, the people that go out and play at night. Even today, one of the local bar musicians who plays in my church tells me that at the local big jazz bar in Detroit, Baker's Keyboard Lounge, he said the average pay is $150 a night. And I said, man, do you realize that in 1969 through 1973, I was making $100 a night every time I played. And I liked it so much that when I went away to college, Boston University, I was actually flying back to Detroit on the weekends to play for my $100 a night. Now, frankly, with my $100 a night, all my money went to American Airlines. At that time, I wasn't making any money, but I just had a lot of fun. But by the time I got to the end of college, I'd start thinking about it real hard. I said, if we were making $1 million a year, I'm not sure I'd be happy with this. And at the same time, my father had asked me to lead and to build a junior high youth ministry for the church. I got so much fulfillment and enjoyment, satisfaction out of working with these children, working with their mothers and fathers, because I had to ask their mothers and fathers for permission to take them on college tours, to take them camping, to engage them in the kind of projects we had them doing. I said I could do this for the rest of my life. And fast forward 50 years later, 47 years as an ordained minister, but 3 years in divinity school. 50 years later, I can truly say all things, not some things, but all things have worked together for good for those who love God. I love God. And because I love God, I have found something good in everything. And I struggle sometimes in that I don't want to become what I call an accommodationist. The accommodationist is the person who is always making an excuse for this or for that. I could do this, but I'm doing that, and I'm doing that because that is actually a pretty good thing. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about being a person who just makes accommodation and makes excuses for how their lives have turned out. But for me, all things have worked together for good. I served 8 years on the Detroit City Council, elected citywide. I want you to think about what I just said. 8 years elected citywide. And no matter what city you live in America, and I know there are people looking at this program right now all over America, there's a city council or a town governance equivalent where you live. And politics is brutal. It is a brutal, brutal activity. But that's how our democracy in America works. But for me, being in politics was, believe it or not, actually a spiritual experience. And what I mean by that is that every vote that I had to take every week, we might have 100, 150 votes per week. Everything from whether or not to erect a street light to paying for an abusive police officer, passing a budget for the city. Every decision we made, for me, I had two issues. One issue is, what does God think about this? And number two, from a political standpoint, what's the right thing to do? And the point that I'm making is that for me, I turned 8 years in elective politics into a spiritual experience. This is one of the most spiritual times in my life. And I thank God for that. And so the point that I'm making is that you can turn anything into a good experience. And I thank God for how things turn out. And sometimes when things don't turn out the way that I plan, I actually thank God. And I thank God because sometimes the things that, and matter of fact, I say often, the things that I didn't plan on turn out to be better. I've had people to come to my church and threaten me. Had one last week. But I thank God. And I thank God for the threats because I know that that's God's way of keeping me humble, God's way of keeping me in check. And I just thank God for it. And I keep every day looking for the good that God has put out there for us. And I encourage you in your life to keep looking for the good and keep asking yourself, what is God really trying to tell me? What is God really trying to show me? If I have cancer, is God trying to show me something else? If my marriage has failed, what is God really showing me? And how is God strengthening me through this moment? If I've lost my job, what can I learn from this? And What opportunity has God set before me? And I just want to encourage you right now that whatever you're going through, whatever is your struggle in life, you have a child, a grown child who just won't grow up. If you have an adult grandchild who's really struggling to get their life together, and you in your maturity are finding that you've got to take time to help your own grown child get themselves together, or your great-grandchild to get themselves together. Maybe, just maybe, my friends, God is trying to show you something else. And so I encourage you to walk through life every day looking for the good. Look for the best in life and ask yourself, how can I strive for the kingdom of God right now? Not when I die, but right now. What can I do with my life? What should I do? And what is God trying to tell me? And I want you to know, I believe when Paul says all things work together for good for those who love God, what Paul is really saying is you have a purpose. God put you here for a reason. You're not here by accident. Now, you may blow some of that purpose. You may mess up some of that purpose, but it's not because God doesn't have a purpose for you. And so I encourage you to hope for the best, strive for the best, work for the best in all that you're doing, and understand that God has a promise of a blessing for you right now. Hold on to this faith, hold on to this hope, hold on to this joy, hold on to this love, and remember, the Lord has a blessing for you right now. Stick around, my friends. I'll be right back.
There are people all across this globe who now will have the opportunity to know you like I do, because of course you are very forthcoming in telling stories about life, stories that are relatable, and that means something. How wonderful it is, and I just look forward to seeing how this platform, this new platform, will just rise and grow and really be a vessel through which you can be a blessing to folk all over this world, and Lord knows we need it.
Hello. Thanks again for sticking with us in this segment of the show. I have with me today Dr. George Fleming. And just for the benefit of those who perhaps did not hear Dr. Fleming last week, today I want to begin where we left off last week. Dr. Fleming has an amazing life story, and I think it fits right in with my message today. All things work together for good for those who love God. Dr. George Fleming, thank you again for being with me today.
My pleasure.
Yeah, and last week you were sharing how you became a psychologist. Can you, just for the benefit of those who maybe were not able to see last week's episode, can you share with us, how you became a psychologist and how in your life a lot of good things have come out of what could have been adversity?
Yes. I'll start off with my religious foundation. I was raised in the church, and the AME Church, Bethel AME, New Haven, Connecticut, Dixwell Avenue.
My wife worshiped there when she was a student at Yale.
All right. We
That's
connected,
right.
man.
Isn't that something?
And there, I excelled in, well, I was a good student. My mother read the Bible, I read the Bible, and I was a good student in relationship to a lot of religious information and understanding from the Bible.
Did you go to Hilltop College? What's the high school
Hill
name?
House.
Hill House.
No, we left before Hill House. We left when I was in junior high school.
Okay.
And she got a job with this wonderful white lady who took her away and moved us to Norwalk, Connecticut. And we lived there as a suburb of New Canaan. But anyway, I was teaching in Sunday school to the little kids. I don't know.
And you were saying you were only 10 years
Yeah, I was
of
about
age
10,
yourself?
12, 10 through 12.
Okay.
And then I became about 13, old enough to go get a job. And I went out and became a caddy and carried golf bags and stuff like that. Well, any event, my religious training excelled in knowledge in the way I spoke and acted, and people thought, oh, he's going to be a minister, he's going to be a minister, he's going to be a minister. My mother was so proud. She was just stuck on that road. You're going to be a minister, because she was Old South and she loved white people. So she believed that the only things that we could do well was be a minister, pastor, and a teacher. And since pastors teach, she said I had it knocked.
Maybe that's why I'm a minister today. I thought it's something we could do well.
Yeah, and you do. And you do, my brother. So we got into conflict because the way I perceived the job of being a pastor, it's a calling. That you have a connection with God, where God, just like with Paul, he didn't blind me, but God, I wasn't requiring God to blind me, would make a connection, or I would get an enlightened way of knowing this is what I want to do, and that had not come yet. And I had seen and known what I believe to be false prophets, or people who were doing this who looked inappropriate to the actual job that I thought, if I did it the way I would do it, in my reverence to the calling. So when college time came around, I got a scholarship. We were poor. My mother has a third grade education, and she was a domestic. I was her only child, and I was born deformed, and had a lot of issues that she thought and wondered about what I was, because I found out later she thought I was a demon because of the way I was born. I was born with below my legs really mangled. And it got straightened out, thank God, to Yale University. If I hit the lotto, I'm gonna get them people some money in their child unit, because they took good care of me and got my legs right to where I can dance and do all kinds of things now. But anyway, my mother and I were conflictual over my calling.
Let me ask you this. So let me just ask you this. So you say Yale University, I guess their health facility?
Yeah, their hospital.
Their hospital.
And their surgeons.
They worked on you and they treated you, and you said your mother was poor. So I assume
Medicaid. We were on Medicaid.
It didn't cost her.
No, because she didn't have the money.
That's beautiful.
I know. I got my records. She definitely went to clinic. She took me to child clinic and all kinds of specialists, because I had a very unique surgery, and were involved in the work that was done on me. And it took. I took 21 shots a day in my foot, in my legs, to perform what they had to do. So when I went to college, my mother was directing me to become a minister. And I told her I needed a calling. I needed to know this is what God wanted me to do, because I was devoted to do it if that came. But it had to come to my satisfaction. She said, don't worry about it. Go on to school. You got this thing going on. You got good gift of gab. You know the word. People love you when you do it. They're going to come. And I said, Ma, that's not what this is. This is not a job. This is a call. This is a serious work. This is people's lives and faith. And I was an athlete in high school and a wrestler, which my upper body is well developed, and it helped my game. And I was good. I got a scholarship to a place called Hillsdale College here in Michigan.
Right here in Michigan?
Right here in Michigan, 90 down 99, 100 miles out of Detroit. Flew into Detroit a lot when I was going to school. In any event, after the first year, I came home, and she said, well, she said, can these people teach you to be a minister? And they had one course in religion, And I knew it, and I knew where she was going with that. And I wanted to go to college, and I knew this was my only way. So I lied to her. I told her, yeah. And then when I came home for the summer, and at the end of the summer of my freshman year, she said, boy, when are you going to be this minister? Because you're going back to school now. This is your second year. I hear it's about 2-3 years. You all go to school. Then you're going to be the minister. We're going to get you a church. And I said, and I told her the truth. No, I haven't received the calling yet that I'm looking for. I didn't know what I wanted to be, but I knew I had received what I needed, felt I needed to be what she wanted me to be. So she decided then to make my life hell. When I told her no, and I told her the truth, this isn't really a religious school where they're gonna make me a minister. Now I can be a minister if I go to school, but this school is not the one that's gonna do it. And she said, well then you ain't got no need to go there. You need to go where you can. And this was not the age of majority that we know today, where 18-year-olds can sign papers and do things and go to other states and get medical treatment. And since with wrestling, there was a likelihood that I could get injured, because that's what I did to other people, and I'm sure they would do it to me. She, in turn, refused to sign my papers to go to college. I said, Ma, I can't dig a ditch. I can't get a job digging a ditch. Normal-sized man and me show up to dig a ditch. They're going to give him the job. I have a college education paid for, waiting for me in Michigan. Let me go. No, you're going to the devil. No, no. I have value at Hillsdale. The school, I told my coach, I got problems, man. He said, get here by a certain timeline if you can, and keep me posted. Next time I talked to the coach, he got the legal team to hook up some great documentation. And I didn't know my mother had an endowment insurance policy to pay for my college. I think it was $7,500 through New York Life. They had the check made out to me and sent it to her to give to me. She wasn't going to give it to me because she knew if she gave it to me, I was going to go back to Hillsdale. So she could not crack it, but she didn't want me to have the money. So basically, we sat down at the kitchen table with the documentation from Hillsdale for her to sign and a witness. And I signed the check for her to have the $7,500, and she was so happy. And in that documentation, she signed me away to the state of Michigan, and I became an emancipated minor.
Okay.
Which meant I could sign my own papers from that point on.
So both you and your mother were happy.
Oh yeah.
With that.
Yeah.
That was a win-win.
She was furious after she found out what really had happened, but there wasn't nothing she could do about it. I didn't speak to her again. I was 18 for 12 years. Because she had put out so much dirt in the family because everybody wondered, why are you doing him like this? Church boy, good student, preaching in Sunday school. She put out I was on drugs, I had beat her, stole from her, all this kind of stuff, which were lies. So nobody would take me in. I couldn't come home. None of my relatives would deal with me.
But Dr. Fleming?
Yes, sir.
We're about out of time for this show, but your life story, the part that we have just heard today, is living testimony to the words of Paul in Romans 8:28. Now we know that all things work together for good. It sounds like you've had a good ending. I mean, you earned a PhD.
At 26 years old.
At 26 years of age, you're a psychologist. Now you're retired. You got your mental faculties. You got a daughter and a granddaughter. You were married to a beautiful woman.
Indeed.
You know,
All by the grace of God
All by
and the goodness that if you're faithful, you keep the word as best you can, and God will reward your life, or your life will not be full of the sin that can take you away from the path of goodness that God has to offer you.
So Dr. George Fleming, I want to thank you again for being with me today on
Thank you,
this
sir.
program. And I'm glad you're going to be with me for another 2 weeks. Next week, we're going to talk about running toward your challenge.
Do you know what my hourly rate is?
What?
Do you know what my hourly rate is?
No. His hourly rate. Oh, we're in trouble now.
No, I'm only playing with you. This is my joy to donate my time to you.
Thank you
To your
so
work.
much. And to our audience, I want to thank you for being with us today. Tell a friend what you've experienced. Tell them next week, Saturday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be talking again with Dr. George Fleming. This time, we'll be talking about David taking down Goliath, running to his adversary. So God bless, God keep you, and remember, I am still praying for you.
America used to be considered a godly country. It doesn't seem to be that way to me now. And I don't mean to be disrespectful or anything, but it's so many things they're okaying for the wrong reasons. There's not godly reason. People need to really open up the Bible, the Bible, and look in it, and really get it into their heart. And this, the way the Reverend Hood is doing this is a comfortable way. It's not forcing anything on people. It's a comfortable way and a loving way for it to continue to move in that direction.
The way Reverend Hood presents it, you can understand it, and it makes you want to delve into the Bible even more so that you can see more, because it seems like the program goes off too fast. We need the bread of life.
We really do.
These days, we need it more than ever. And Reverend Hood's ministry on TV is giving us our bread.
This is a new ministry which is just starting. Reverend Hood needs your help in sharing the good news of Jesus Christ and his power throughout the world. If you would be so kind as to send a donation to Nicholas Hood III Ministries of any amount, Reverend Hood will send you a free complimentary copy of his book of original personal prayers and beautiful photographs entitled The Test, The Strength, The Endurance, and The Way Out. We appreciate your support, and in this way, you can partner with Reverend Hood in sharing the good news of Jesus throughout the world. Please make your check out to Nicholas Hood III Ministries and mail it to 4535 Chrysler Drive, Detroit, Michigan, 48201. Just knowing you took the time to watch today's broadcast is a great encouragement to Pastor Nick Hood. If this broadcast has been a blessing to you, we ask that you mail a tax-free donation to Nicholas Hood Ministries